This short video is going to talk about in-text citation basics. So this video is going to show you how to integrate citations into your text using parenthetical documentation. You should definitely make sure that you are using our Little Seagull handbook and also the other resources provided in the text for more details. So in-text citation has three components. First of all, some sort of signal phrase. You can never just drop a quote, a paraphrase, or a summary into the text without introducing where that came from. And then the actual quote, paraphrase, or summary, and then some sort of parenthetical documentation. That is your basic in-text citation. Now, with the advent of many, many more electronic sources now, there's some questions about what do I include, what do I not include. But the important thing to remember is with in-text citation, by giving the author's name, by giving the page number, what you're doing is you're directing your reader back to your bibliographic information. So as long as you have enough information in your text to get your reader back to your bibliography, you're likely going to be okay. So let's take a look at the difference between MLA and APA. So with MLA citation, it's a little bit more simple than APA because it doesn't use years. So with MLA citation, you need the author's last name and the page number. Again, the author's last name is important because your bibliography is alphabetized. So they can easily find the author's last name in that alphabetical list. So what you're going to see is that there's different ways to do this. In this one, you can put it as part of your signal phrase. You can put the author's last name in your citation at the end. And these are called parenthetical citations because they use parentheses. Or you can use it as part of the sentence. So that's one way to do it. I mean, two different ways to do it, both as a signal phrase and then in the parenthetical at the end. So if you use the author's name in the signal phrase, you don't need to repeat it in the parenthetical citation. If you don't use the author's name in your signal phrase, then you do need to put it in the parenthetical citation. So you can see here it's used in the signal phrase and it's not used in the citation. So the other thing that you need is you need to make sure that you are using the page number where applicable. And this gets a little bit tricky because with a lot of electronic sources, there are no page numbers. So if there are no page numbers, you are not going to put anything in your parentheses. That makes it even more important then to include the author's name in your parentheses and to include some sort of signal phrase that still allows you to have parenthetical citations. A lot of digital database sources are full text, and sometimes you'll see those as like an HTML website, but oftentimes you can download a PDF. If you can download a PDF, I really suggest you do that because oftentimes those PDFs have the page numbers from the original publication. So for instance, if you're reading a magazine, the database might have the magazine kind of as a website with no page numbers, or it might have a PDF that looks like the actual page layout of the magazine that does have page numbers. So definitely take a look at that when you're using your sources. Most of the sources that we're using for our first couple of projects do not have page numbers, so it's really important that you're introducing authors. If your source is written by an organization or a group, then you would introduce that as the author's name. Basically, whatever the first part of your bibliography entry is, that's what you're going to use as the author's name. So APA is a little bit different because what you're going to notice is APA also focuses on the year of publication. If you remember back to our earlier video, that's because APA tends to be writing for the social sciences and the sciences. So with MLA, you might be writing an essay about history. You might be writing an essay about like a Shakespearean play. And in that situation, you might actually have to look at older research to see the kind of history of how people have thought about those events or those texts. But when you're writing for communications, for business, for the social sciences, or even engineering, usually it's really important to have very recent sources, right? Because those are going to be the most up-to-date. Things in the sciences and technologies change really fast. So that's why APA documentation uses that year of publication. It's not some random rule. It's part of addressing your rhetorical needs. By showing the year of publication in your citation, you show your reader that you're looking at sources that are up to date and current. So AP is slightly more complicated because you have those 3 pieces of information. What you want to remember, though, is the author's name and the year always go together. So in this first one, according to Jones, 1998, the author's name is part of your signal phrase, and the year goes right next to the name. And again, this is important because a lot of times you might have authors with like multiple publications, and you want to direct your reader to your bibliography so they can quickly figure out which source you're referring to. The same thing is here. The author's name is used in the signal phrase, and the year is right next to the author's name. It's not at the end. So it's almost using like 2 parentheses. In this third one, the author's name is not part of the signal phrase. So the author's name goes in the parentheses after the quote. Now, what you might notice about these is, unlike MLA, where the quote goes at the end of a sentence, in APA, that parenthetical documentation goes right next to the quotation, even if it's in the middle of a sentence. So those are the biggest differences between MLA and APA citation. This is nothing that you have to memorize right now. I would encourage you to use your handbooks, to use the resources listed in our course to help guide you and to check over your work. The more that you use the citation style, the easier it becomes to remember how to do it. But this is kind of the basics, is when you're integrating citations into your text, you always need an author's name, the page number, or for APA, you're going to do an author's name, the year, and the page number. You're always going to have the signal phrase. You're always going to have the parenthetical citation. So I hope this short video helped clear up some information for you about in-text citation basics. As always, if you have questions, you should reach out to your professor personally and let me know what you need help with.